Hey everybody, it's been a quick minute. I've been super busy. Anyway, that's not important. RPGMaker. RPGMaker, I bought it at full price. It goes on sale on Steam like once a year or so. It's a game and it's also a game creation engine, and it's a pretty major one. Like if I've covered Fear and Hunger, that's a popular gaming series at this point. And that's all made in RPGMaker. There's a lot of examples. Yume Nikki. What's another RPGMaker one? The Witch's House. Oh man, and I apologize for any I forgot. I'll leave it in the comments if I think of any more like really classic. The point is, RPGMaker is an engine, a legitimate one. It's a beginner game making engine, but it is a legitimate one. And so actually, I've already learned so much about making games, about designing games. It's been really great. So alright, let me just tell you, how does RPGMaker work? What are the basics? You have these things, you paint maps. So you don't have to be that great of an artist. I am experimenting. You'll see from this footage, I am experimenting, putting my own little doodles into the game and things like that, designing my own texture, graphic packs. So you can do it either way. And I'm actually working on another little project where I'm using all, pre-rendered stuff. I believe like some of the famous games, like I believe The Witch's House, for example, use all, assets that come with RPGMaker. Whereas like something like Fear and Hunger, of course, is all custom assets. So you can really go either way. That's my point. Okay, but so you paint a map, you make a map with your asset pack. You then also have a database where you define all your enemies, all your player characters, all the NPCs, anything that you want. You have a database where you tell the game what this is. And then you have your main party, which is kind of built in. You can define the qualities of your main party, but, it assumes it's going to be an RPG and you're going to have, like a party of some number of adventurers, possibly just one or whatever. But then around that, you paint whatever maps you want. Then everything you've ever seen in any classic RPG, like Pokemon, like Golden Sun, like Final Fantasy, like the list goes on and on. Any classic RPG, all you need to do is paint maps, define your party and how it works, how interacting with things work, like what items are, make that database, and then just create these things called events. In RPGMaker, they're just called events. Okay, so events. Events and maps are really all you need to make a game in RPGMaker. I mean, you have to write the text and everything, you have to think of the idea, but if you just paint the maps that your character can move through, define the events. Now, so what are events? Enough pussyfooting around. So events are basically the, click it and set it and forget it, commands that you can enter into RPGMaker, and it really does cover anything that you would want to put in a game. So like, for example, I'm working on a game called Killer Granny. And I don't want to get too distracted, but the premise is, I was listening to Comedy Bang Bang, and they were talking about how if the 1980s stereotype of like two people get shocked and it becomes a Freaky Friday kind of thing where you swap bodies because you're both shocked. And they were saying, wouldn't that be funny if it could happen across town as long as it was simultaneous? And so I thought, what if somebody was getting like electrocuted, like a crazed killer was getting killed by the electric chair, and across town an old granny accidentally shocks herself, and now it's like a Chucky the Doll scenario where it's a crazed, hardened killer in the body of a granny. What was my point? My point was, so for example, so it's a Killer Granny horror game. Let's just take that as an example. I have a map called Granny's Basement, and you can go down there, and that's an event. So going down the stairs, you set one tile, you set when I touch this or when I interact with it, we move to this other map. We move to the stairs. We move downstairs in my case, because I painted stairs on the map and then set an event there. And I say, this takes you downstairs. So now my characters can go down the stairs into the basement. In another video, I'll have to talk about switches. Switches are really interesting, and they're kind of how you make if-then programming statements and kind of keep track of things in your game. So like, for example, like in Ocarina of Time, when you have the 3 dungeon stones as a kid, you can then go to the Temple of Time, you can then go and become Adult Link and stuff like that. Like that, those are switches. But we'll talk about that in another video. The point is I programmed this guy in the basement. So now, if you go down there as Killer Granny and you bother him, he says, leave me alone. And then if you bother him again, he says something else. And again, so these are all internal. There's things called switches and things called self-switches, which I guess I'll get into in a future video. I have him working through internal switches where he will tell you to leave him alone, warn you again, and then initiate combat and fight you. And then from there, he disappears from the map. He can give items, he can give rewards. All of this, you're just coding this into events. That's really all there is to it. RPGMaker, you're just mostly, I mean, you can get really advanced and do custom stuff, but you're mostly just painting maps and then defining kind of partially coding in, but you don't have to know how to code it. You just have to know how to select the right options. It has like big graphical menus, and you can choose, it's almost like a heads-up display. You can choose basically anything you want. You know, you can have it initiate combat, give an item, and change something important in the rest of the world. Activate a global switch is what the two types are: global switches and self switches. But these are the big four. So creating your maps, map painting, event coding so that everything happens, switches that interact in interesting ways for the player, where you know they have a sense of progress and things, and then the other thing I would say is if you can manage it, interesting custom graphics, and I'll get into that too. Some of this footage is going to show me doing some very basic, really all you have to do is the game draws from palettes. It says, okay, I'm going to go to something.png for how this character looks. And it's really ingenious. So all you do is you go to that PNG and you can paint over like the 8 different animations that a character needs. And there you go, custom art. So I'm not that good of an artist, as you can see in some of this footage, but that's really all there is to it. So custom art, switches, putting events on your map, and you can build a whole RPG. It really is that simple. I think that's all I have for today. I will try to check in as I make more progress on both. So the serious fantasy one I'm trying to make with custom art is called the Churning Field. So if you see footage from the Churning Field, that's one of my projects. And the other one is Killer Granny, which is I'm just going to use standard graphics from RPGMaker. That's a cool thing I didn't mention. So RPGMaker, when you buy the game, which is to say the game engine, all the assets that are in there you can use in a game and sell it. You know, go for it. They're not going to sue you for using their art. So Killer Granny, I'm using their art just to make more quick progress in programming a game as opposed to making art for a game. I want to practice making art for a game in the Churning Fields. But I think that's all I have for today. Thanks for checking in. I'm going to do more RPGMaker videos and whatever I feel like. So I'll talk to everybody soon.